All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking with us. It is now 1 minute past 9 a.m. You're just in time for the next conversation of the day this fine Monday morning. Thank you so much for sticking with us. This is KBC Channel 1. This is Good Morning Kenya. Thank you so much for being around for this next part of our conversation this morning. Now, before we, came back, we just got a glimpse of a feature on cyber hygiene, and that feature is what leads us into the next conversation this fine Monday morning. And this is all about big tech accountability in Africa. What is our role in keeping big techs accountable? How can we regulate big tech conduct in terms of the content they have, content moderation? What is our role in this? Remember, big tech firms are dominating our platforms. The African market is full of big tech. How safe are we in terms of this? To help us in this particular conversation, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by none other than Kennedy Wangari, who is a data analyst at UNEP. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much for having me.
And it's a pleasure. How are you feeling?
I'm happy to be here.
Good.
And yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And of course, we invite you to be part of this conversation this fine Monday morning. The hashtag, as always, is... Thank you so much for sticking with us. Let's start with, first of all, understanding, because we're talking about big tech, Kennedy.
Yes.
And this terminology might be foreign to somebody. Big tech. For somebody who's not tech savvy, somebody who doesn't understand this particular term, just basics. What do we mean when we use the term big tech?
Great, that's a good question. When we talk of big tech, we basically describing the companies that are dominant in the information technology sector. And we're looking at the different areas, such as companies that are leading in social media networking, companies that are leading in artificial intelligence, accelerated computing, e-commerce websites, the different areas of information technology sector. And in this case, we're looking at the companies that are leading in the different areas. And most of them come from the US or the Silicon Valley, and examples would be Google. We're looking at Meta, formerly Facebook. We're looking at Netflix. We're looking at Uber. We're looking at these big tech companies that are leading in the different areas. From Google, Facebook, TikTok, could go on and on. Yes.
Amazon.
Yes.
All right. So based on your definition, so it means tech companies are classified?
Depending on the different sectors of the tech space that they're focusing on. You've talked of Amazon, looking at the mainly dominant on e-commerce. If it's Facebook, we're looking at social networking, that is the social media company. If it's TikTok, if it's Google, if it's self-driving cars, we also have companies that are also dominant in that area. So there are a lot of different sectors in the tech space, and we have different companies that are they're really leading in those areas.
Oh, wow. Yes. Wow. Quite interesting there. Yeah. Means this conversation is touching on everybody.
Absolutely.
There is no one that can be left out of this.
Absolutely, yes.
Everybody is part of it.
Considering that tech is an enabler to almost everything, and that's why we're excited to have this conversation that's building up on cyber security hygiene, and today's conversation all around social media networking and the companies. So we would go on and on. Probably maybe sometime we can also look at other different sectors of IT and the big tech companies.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. And I'm interested in getting your view on this. From where you sit, you've mentioned all these companies, big tech companies, and it is just recently that we've been seeing a lot of court cases, people suing some of these big tech companies, matters concerning disinformation, hate speech, violence, you name them. So do you feel like there is a gap that needs to be filled when we see such cases, big tech companies being taken to court?
Absolutely, there's a huge gap. If you were to compare African markets and the European markets, these big tech companies, they're mainly dominant and come from the US, the European markets. And if you look at how they've been operating, they already court cases of Google, Meta, and the rest. They've already been fined heavy fines, such as anti-competition laws. And again, if you also look at the same, we're looking at these big tech companies, as you've also mentioned, they're now invading the African emerging markets to dominate the markets, and also to even also within the African context.
Let me stop you there. You used the word invading. Invading. Is it invading? Is it dominating? Which is the best terminology? And how can you invade something that is vacant?
For these big tech companies,
but of course, you will come to your point.
Yes, but, they've realized that we have a huge opportunity for them to grow their businesses, be it in e-commerce, be it in social media, and considering that Africa has that huge market, so that's what we call the emerging market. They've come to our space, and when we talk of dominating and also invading, it's because we're looking at they're not following the rules of the land. If you are to look at the African context, as I was putting my point across, there are already cases that have been filed even here in Kenya. You'd go on and on, look at in Nigeria, South Africa, name them. There are a lot of countries even within the African context where these big tech companies are now penetrating, that we already have court cases of these companies being sued because of one or two, three reasons. Say that maybe they're not, they're violating the rules of the land, or they're not really taking care of the data of the users, of the people they've been able to onboard on their platforms.
And when you look at that, it means that now this gap that is there, you've mentioned that this gap that is there, whose responsibility is it to fill it? Does the common mwananchi watching this show today have a role to play in ensuring we have big tech accountability in Kenya and in Africa at large?
That's a great question. We all have different roles. Each and every one of us is a key stakeholder in this. One, it starts with the big tech companies. If you look at context in today's conversation is around the social media companies and content moderation and the operations in Africa. You realize that they usually have, like the case example of TikTok and Facebook, they have their social media content moderation policies in terms of how they approve their content to minimize cases of disinformation, fake news. And you find that they have very good documentation on how they promise that they comply. A good example is how they promised during the run-up to the Kenya's election that they would make sure that I would have a political terrain that a political terrain that's not polluted. But we ended up even having cases of NCIC, that is the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, already even coming up to issue a warning that if you don't take caution of these and these that's happening within your platform in Kenya, we're going to ban you. And it means that the case example of Facebook is showing us that these big tech companies, they have their social media policies, but they're just on paper. They don't really live up to follow these policies. And another concern has been, if you look at the different court cases that have been filed, be it in South Africa, be it in Kenya, you realize that when they penetrate these different countries, there's what we call the laws of the land. There's the constitution, and also like the case example of Kenya, in that Facebook was not really complying with the laws and regulations of the Kenyan constitution. You find that in those examples like of Nigeria and South Africa, you come into different country, you have your own policies of how you operate as a company, but you don't really live up to follow the rules of that particular country. And this is where, like in the US, we've had the big tech companies filed sued because of not following the anti-competition behavior and the rules.
So is the question about policy making, or is it about accountability or following of the policies that have been made? Is there a synchrony that needs to be acquired in this process?
Yes, we need to. One, we've seen how these companies have been operating with their own policies and being given now the permission to penetrate the African market. And we've also seen that we cannot trust them to live up to their own rules and regulations and to even follow our own rules of the land.
So it's not about policies?
Yes, and There's also the aspect of policy, and when we look at the efforts that have been made by both the governments, there's that gap that we've seen that the companies have their own regulations. They're not following. They've come to a country. They're not following our regulations. So what do we do as a country? And that's where we're now finding that the other stakeholder being the government, in this case, and the regulators of that particular country, they need to also step up to put them to be accountable. And then also the key stakeholder in this whole conversation being the end user, in this case the social media platform users. How are they sharing their data and how are they using these particular platforms? So for each of these four key stakeholders, they have a role to play. We've seen the big tech companies, they're not being accountable, they're not living up to their promises and also living up to the rules of the land. So what do we do as the government of the country, and also what is it that we as the users of these particular social media platforms, what do we need to do to ensure that we're maintaining that digital sovereignty, and also that we don't fall into these dangers of disinformation, fake news, and all these vices.
So you're saying, to get you clearly, from where you sit, do you have the data that indicates that these particular big tech companies, not to mention any particular one, yes, but big tech companies have policies that they themselves are not following? Have you done that? Have you gotten to the point where you've conclusively come to that point? Because I am aware that some of these cases are still ongoing in court.
Yes.
So how did you come to that particular conclusion?
Great. We could use an example of TikTok and the run-up to the 2022 general election in Kenya. And there was a rife and a huge concern on the videos that were quite viral on TikTok, because most of them were politically ethnic and profiling and sort of inciting ethnic violence. And because of the various initiatives that were taken in place, TikTok was forced to flag down and pull down over 130 videos. And I would go on and on in the case example of Facebook, and how a report by Global Witness shared their data, and that prompted NCIC to make that ultimatum to Facebook that, you know what, this is what is happening in Kenya. This is what you're not complying with our laws, and this is the ultimatum. So the case examples of Facebook and also TikTok really paint a picture to the need for the state and non-state factors that are involved within this conversation, and also the people leveraging the social media platforms to understand and know how do we get to be more accountable, how do we ensure that we regulate these companies so that at the end of the day we're able to make best use of this digital economy, and at the same time we don't get to face the dangers of the weaponization of artificial intelligence and all these big technologies.
So is it that they are not following their own rules, or they are not following the rules of the land with which they operate?
Both. For the cases that we've had even in Kenya.
Both,
okay. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So if you look at it keenly, we are going to be particular even as we have this conversation, and the particularity I want us to use is when a Kenyan or anyone who is watching us today is going online, because some of these big tech that we're talking about are social media, which we all consume. What can we do as social media users to protect ourselves from some of these vices that might harm us in the long run? How can I do it as an individual?
Great. One thing, and I really appreciate the Office of the Data Commissioner in Kenya, is that they're creating that awareness and sensitizing on the need for data privacy and cybersecurity concerns. And that's one great way to make people understand and be aware of the risks and how they leverage these social media platforms. And another great way is where now the state factors are coming in to ensure that we have policies, we have regulations that make sure that we're able to put these big tech firms into accountable, and we're able to regulate what the operations in Kenya. And a good example is how NCIC was able to act in the previous elections case of disinformation and to the run-up to the election. And more to that, when we're talking of ensuring that these big tech companies, because another key huge concern has been on, besides the operations on their social media platforms, is on the labor practices. Because if you look at some of the court cases are all around the social media content moderation and how they handle their staff within African context. So I believe there is need for the big tech companies to also employ more African-based native speakers who will really come in handy to help fill in the gaps when we're having conversation around social media content moderation, their policies, and understanding our local context. So I believe those are key efforts that we can really, as a country and also as social media users, we can be able to take up that will help us to ensure that we're able to leverage the social media platforms and we are safe online.
But we are going to come to the aspect of the government and the role of government a bit later on. But first, I'm looking at the person watching us today.
Yes.
Let's start from the ground, because in Kenya we're looking at bottom up.
Yep.
So starting from the bottom, do people know about these policies, social media policies, big tech policies? Do people understand them? From the research you've done and from the interactions you've made with many individuals, are they aware about these policies, even as they go online and use their big tech services?
Oh, great. That's a great question. That's why at the United Nations, on every year, on the 18th of June, we celebrate the International Day on Countering Hate Speech. And beyond that, we have the UN Strategy Plan on Countering Hate Speech. And this is basically to create that awareness, to amplify the conversation around making sure that people are aware of how they're leveraging the social media platforms, both for job creation and also to maintain their safety. Above and beyond what the UN is championing for, there's also the various initiatives that are there to make sure that, and I applaud KBC for creating that awareness in terms of even we've just had a run-up on cyber hygiene to ensure that people they have access to this knowledge and they're able to play their part when it comes to the data they're sharing. And also at the government level, there are also initiatives around how these companies operate within our country. How do they collect the data from our users? How are they using the data? I believe for an end user, there's need for us to be digital savvy, to be aware of the different platforms. And as has been mentioned, is that we make sure that before we share any information, before we share our data, we're able to verify, we're able to fact check. And yes.
Okay. And if from the UNEP,
yes,
where you sit, United Nations Environmental Program, you have managed to reach out in terms of sensitization, in terms of public awareness, and making that information reach everybody out there. How is the reception? How is the information getting there? Are you meeting those particular targets and ensuring that, at the end of the day, the people you wanted to reach, you've managed to get to them?
That's a great question. Even as we look at the internet penetration and digital transformation in Kenya, it's taking shape. But at the same time, the challenges when it comes to the adoption of these big tech. Before we even get to the point now, we're creating awareness on how the people who are already aware and they're already using these technologies on how they can use them to be more safe and secure in their operations. There have been a lot of challenges when it comes now to creating that awareness, and that's why the government is really doing a great job on digital literacy programs to ensure that people first can be able to adopt these digital technologies. There's been great reception to the people who are already leveraging tech. Statistically, about 40% of Kenyans have access to the internet, and we're trying in partnership with the Office of the Data Commissioner to create more sessions and more awareness to the people, and at the same time amplify their efforts towards ensuring more people are able to adopt tech. Also, as they adopt tech, they're also aware of the risks involved and what's their role in the digital space as they create their jobs, or they amplify their businesses, but more on the security aspect. Yes.
Then what are the areas that you always touch on as you go through these awareness programs that you've set up?
One has to be on the data, the kind of data that you share out there. We highly encourage people to be cautious on not just using any applications. We've seen cases of these applications that make maybe someone look older, and other applications.
Lester, those are key areas. Those are key areas, because yes. I know some of our ladies love them.
Yes.
I know a friend who is a female showed me her face if she was a man.
Yep.
And I really felt awkward there. So let's go slowly on those particular areas. Yes. Okay, yes. We can mention them one by one. Yes. So let's start. First of all, you're talking about going slow on the number of applications
in terms of the data that you share out there,
data
that are not trusted, because most of these applications, what they do is that for you, they entice you that this is what you'll get. Maybe like, would you want to get a picture of how you'll be in 10 years from now, or how you'll be in your old age?
Should avoid that.
But what we find that is that most of these applications are not trusted, and they end up stealing your data, because you're sharing your photo and then you'll get an output, a different image. And we've also been cautioned more on the kind of data that we share out there, because there are a lot of people out there crawling your personal information out there, and they could use it to for any damage. So when it comes to the number of applications that people are using, we try to encourage them use trusted sites. We have likes of TikTok, Facebook, and the other big tech, and also more on the awareness on how do they ensure their data privacy and cyber security. Also, those are the main concerns around how do we ensure that they are secure online and the kind of information they share. Yes.
So avoid using so many applications that you do not understand which a particular application is it that can have a breach in terms of privacy and information and data.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if we are talking about that one being one of the key areas that you touch on, of course you minimize data. We are talking about being accountable, yes. Right? So you're saying it starts with us.
It starts with you.
If I'm to minimize data, once I've done that, am I safe? I have minimized the applications I use to maybe 2 or 3 that I have in my phone. Am I accountable? Am I safe? Or are there other things that I still need to do?
One other key thing that has also been highlighted in the prompt that came before this session has been on ensuring that we are conduit, or we are people who, before we share any kind of information out there, be it personal data, we first verify, we fact check, so that we don't find ourselves as vectors of disinformation or fake information, because again, that means we are violating the laws of the land, and that would lead us. And in the rise of these big tech technologies such as deepfake, which has really led to the rise of weaponization, fake videos and fake content, we really encouraging people to ensure that before you share any information, verify, fact check. That could also land you in, yes.
It can land in problems, yes? How can you do that? Going through that process of verification.
Yes.
Because we are talking about holding big tech companies accountable.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
How can you do that, going through that process of verification? Or does it need a tech guru?
There are 2 ways to it. There are 2 players in it. One is the sender or the person sharing this information. One, verify any kind of information you share on both regulated and unregulated platforms. And regulated, we're looking at the cases of WhatsApp. Anyone could share any kind of information. But for regulated social media platforms such as let's say TikTok, Facebook, this is where now we're putting the big tech companies on their toes, because they have algorithms,
right.
And we've had cases of biased algorithms, such as algorithms that are censoring people, maybe or discriminating them, maybe based on their races. So there's the aspect of the end user. don't verify, and any kind of information, ensure you're sharing out, verify, fact check. On the side of the big tech companies, then there's now the push for transparency. How are they building these algorithms? How are they ensuring there's inclusion of the minority groups, and minimizing on the racial discrimination, and openness and inclusiveness, and ensuring there's the ethical aspect. So and that's why there's a lot of controversy, and a good example is what we talked of, the TikTok algorithms, and what happened in Kenya. So and the bigger concern goes back to the companies, because for us as end users, we can try to make sure the kind of information we're sharing is factual, but then we are leveraging on these social media platforms. What are these big tech companies doing? They have made the promise that we have robust artificial intelligence algorithms that are going to help us combat disinformation, fake news, but are they really living up to that? So that's why the concern on the examples of yes, they're making the promise that this is what the promise we're making with our algorithms. They're going to make sure in terms of content moderation and approval, we'll take care of that. But the end result is that we find the algorithms are doing the contrary. So I think the concern mainly is on how do we hold these companies accountable, because at the end of it all, most of them are not really living up to.
And most of us do not even understand or know whether these companies are living up to those particular policies and standards that they've set. What about pictures that we share? I was taking a look at some of the videos on YouTube, because many people have come up with so many research, and these researches show that we need to be careful in terms of the pictures we post online. Does an end user like you and I have a role to play when it comes to the kind of pictures we post? Should we be keen on that? And should we be selective on the backgrounds that are there on the photo, the images that are there, the numbers, the logos that appear? Do they play a role in breaking the chain of accountability?
That's a great question. And when we talk of data, we're not just looking at images. We're looking at any kind of information you share out there, be it audio, be it images, be it textual. And I mentioned something about deepfake technology. This being an advanced artificial intelligence technology that people can use to just, if they have access to images or voice data or text, they can be able to use it to clone and probably come up with a video or a fake image mimicking something that you didn't even say. And those are examples of even what we saw during election, of fake videos and all that. So that's why when we are having those awareness sessions, we're encouraging everyone in terms of their data usage, in terms of the kind of information they share, be it images, be it audio, and how they leverage the different platforms, to be extremely cautious. And that's why we talked of avoid using these unauthorized or not really untrusted sites just for the thrill of it, because you've seen an application that promises you that
it looks fun.
Well, you'll get that picture, but you've already shared your data with them, and you don't know their motive. With the rise of weaponization in artificial intelligence and social media platforms, there's need and caution for us to be cautious in terms of the information we share.
And allow me to cut you short on that particular point. Let's take a break and then we'll be back. There is something that you've said, that we need to just be keen. Don't just click on something just because it looks intriguing. I have seen some online jokes that go around that send me a message. I will not know who is it that sent it to me. Are those platforms safe? And do they also play a role in this chain of accountability? Okay, and of course, after we come back from this break, we'll be taking a look at more in regards to what the United Nations is doing to promote big tech accountability. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more right here on Good Morning Kenya. Yes, thank you so much for being part of this show. We are back with this conversation right here. It's all about big tech accountability in Africa. Keep engaging with us. The hashtag, as always, is Good Morning Kenya. My handle is at Aguko. Keep talking to us with the official station handle at KBC Channel 1. We value your feedback as we talk about big tech accountability. What is our role in ensuring that we have regulations and promotion of good conduct for our big tech companies? Does the government play a role? What about other agencies? What is the way forward in regards to keeping us safe? Well, I'm with Kennedy Wangari. Thank you so much, my brother, for staying with us.
Thank you, thank you.
And before we went on that break, we were talking about pictures taken. And I love the fact that you're saying, you know what, just be careful with the sites that you visit. Let me just ask this in passing, huh?
Yes.
As a by the way.
Yes.
For just somebody who has gone through this, if you get a message on your phone,
yes,
that tuma namba kwa pesa hii.
Yes.
Tuma pesa kwa namba hii.
Yes. Tuma pesa kwa namba hii.
Tuma pesa kwa namba hii.
Yes.
Are such messages supposed to be handled in a for many Kenyans? They would send money to that particular messages, that particular number.
Yes.
A tip for a Kenyan watching today: when you receive such messages of kindly send money to this number, my other number is not working, or you receive a message through Facebook or any platform that so and so is in need, send money kindly, urgently to this particular number. What should you do? Course of action.
A great question. There's been rise of data breach.
Yes.
And how people share, again, from how we share information, how we utilize the personal information, both from companies' perspective and also from the users. And that's why you've heard of cases of data breaches, and someone maybe will send you a text message or ask for money solicit for money from you. Well, if it's someone you know or you trust, let's say maybe I tell you, hey Ram, please don't send me the money through this number, send me to this other number. If it's someone you trust and know, then that does not fall in this context. But
now you see,
yes,
that's what the problem is. Because you know Ram is your friend.
Yes.
And then you get a message from Ram's Facebook account or social media platform that, hey, I am in an emergency. My number is not working. Send money to this number.
Great. I'm coming there.
You're coming there?
Yes.
All right.
This is where now I was engaging Rama and you to send me money, but I engage you that these are the alternative options. But now this brings to the context of, in this case, we've had a conversation. So yes, I know you are to make a payment, but this is another alternative option. But now your concern is mainly pegged on leveraging the social media platforms when holding these conversations. And this is where now you talked of someone maybe might send you through your accounts, your social media accounts, soliciting for money, and they'll seem like as if that's the real or the holder of that particular account. And that's why we are creating that awareness. One, ensure you verify, because we've had a lot of cases recently of accounts being hacked, and that's why we're trying to also ensure that you create more secure and authentication. There are also those features that the different social media platforms allow, so that it's easier for you to enhance the security of your social media platforms. Because one way these people have been able to access or to be able to con people is that most of our social media platforms are not well secured. We have just easy to access or to penetrate accounts. So I'm able to even access, I can just do a few social engineering techniques. I access your account, and then I'm able to just go through your followers and solicit for money. So one key concern on the end users of the social media platform is enable what we call two-factor authentication, in that if someone is trying to access your account in one way or the other, you will get a notification, be it via email or a prompt before that happens. Through your phone or through a text. And there are also other ways that there's the push on how these social media platforms are handling the data, because again, you know, for you to even find yourself landing in such cases of someone taking your money or having to send, being conned or being involved in such vices, is because these people have realized their gaps within these social media platforms, and they're able to leverage on them. So as an end user, enhance your security access in terms of how you access your social media platforms. Ensure that how you're sharing your data, you're promoting a more hygienic environment, and also make sure you're more aware of the different trends and how things are changing in terms of the social media platforms and usage.
All right. And do big techs play a role? Do they have a role in this, in ensuring that our accounts are safe and secure from attacks? They play the largest role. But again, we've in past different scenarios, we can't really trust on them to live up to their policies and to live up to the promise that they make, that we're going to make sure if it's Facebook, it's a secure platform that you can do business, you can communicate, you can engage in different conversations. And that's why there's now the push on the companies that there is the role that an end user can play. There's the role that the government of the different countries you're operating in can play. But you as the owner of this particular company, there's the promise you've made, but you're not living up to it. And that's why you can see even in the US, they're being slapped left, right, center with huge fines. And I think that's a way to keep them on toes. And now with the more concerns on in terms of what other efforts can we put in place. Wow. And just, okay, in conclusion to that particular area, if my account has been hacked, does it mean that there is something that I clicked on? There is a link that I clicked that made me to be susceptible to these particular hackers?
There's the rise of fake websites and links leading to different sites. There are even instances where you could type Facebook and it leads you to a different site that's cloned to mimic the actual Facebook platform. So you'll enter your details and then someone is able to steal your data and information. So there's need for you to also be keen on the different links that you click, whether shared by someone or through your Facebook. We've had cases of people clicking on any Facebook tagged posts and they end up having their accounts hacked. And
that's the question. That's the question. I was reading in one particular platform where somebody was saying, I'm sorry friends, my Facebook account was hacked. One of the comments, so many people are commenting, one of the comments was, hey bro, just tell us the truth. You clicked on the wrong link.
Yes. Is
that something that could be a reason as to why some of our accounts get hacked?
Yes, and that's why part of the awareness sessions that we do have on cybersecurity, on data privacy, we try to enlighten the users of the social media platforms on how they can be able to distinguish between a fake website and a real website, and also to more of verify and fact check. And we've even had cases of people creating up fake website for jobs and people being finding themselves on the wrong side of so it's not just on social media platforms, but even also how do we ensure we leverage in the internet space in a more secure way. So yes,
accountability, very strong and important conversation today. Let's talk about accountability of big techs in terms of now the employees and in the employment sector. How can we ensure that that is safeguarded for employment?
That's a great question, because if you look at one of the 3 lawsuits filed in Kenya, and a couple of others within the African context, they are mainly pegged on labor relations. And in this case, we find that some of these social media platforms, examples of Facebook in the Kenyan case, is that they've been cited that they've not implemented favorable labor practices in terms of maybe there was the case of summer and how during COVID they would have some of the employees working for Facebook hosted in hotels and such. And there's need for these big tech companies, and not just big tech companies, to ensure that we are implementing favorable employment conditions within the country. We've seen some of those cases are citing examples of that some of the social media content moderators for Facebook and TikTok have been facing mental problems and other stressing issues, be it low remuneration, low wages. These are some of the issues that are being highlighted in these court cases, and even in other labor relation court cases. Beyond big tech, there are a lot of concerns on how do we ensure that our employees are well empowered to really deliver impact at their job. So there's a huge concern, not just for big tech, in terms of to look at our policies and to ensure that all these companies that are operating within our country, whether they're African-based or these big tech companies, they're really living up to the employment and labor practices of the country, from the wages, from the working conditions, to living up to the regulations of that particular country. And that's why an example that's away from big tech on social media, that is Uber, has also been on the rise, because again, for them, they're not more on big tech, they're more on transport, but they've been on the spotlight because of similar concerns on labor relations and how they treat their employees within Africa. So there's need to ensure that both African and the big tech companies, and comes to how they handle their staff, how they recruit their staff, and how their working conditions is really taken care of. Yes.
And do you feel like for all these cases that are coming up, that we're actually solving rather than just piling up these particular problems?
I would say
labor relations?
It's a great step in the right direction to making sure that these big tech companies and also African-based companies are being regulated and held accountable of their operations. And I believe that will go in a long way to minimize what we call the market dominance of these big tech companies. And at the same time, I'm looking at, if you're able to solve these problems, it means that it will be easier for, again, as Africans, we are also creative people. We can build our own African-based digital platforms. We've even had cases even in Kenya, people building social networking platforms. But then I'm looking at it, if you're able to solve these challenges at a global, regional, and national context, it will be easier for us creative minds to even build and have our own African and Kenyan-based social media platforms or tech-based platforms, compete with these big tech companies, and ensure the whole conversation around inclusion, digital economy, is a reality. So I'm looking at it, it's a step in the right direction. If you're able to solve these problems and put these companies to accountability, it also sets the pace for us as Africans, because even for us, even if we build these applications, we'll still face the same challenges in terms of market dominance, handling, and how we leverage the data or that our users share with our platform. So I'm looking at it as it's setting the pace.
Yes. But let me divert also, still in relations to matters concerning money, all right?
Yes.
We have buying and selling of products online.
Yes.
A very key area there.
Yes.
Because we still see instances where what you see is not what you get.
Yes.
And the money you spent isn't actually, there's no value for money.
Yes.
How can we ensure accountability in that area of buying and selling of products online?
Great. That's part of that's e-commerce, and it's taken care of. We have within the African context, likes of Kenya, South Africa, Mauritius, Nigeria, these countries that have faced these major crisis with these big tech companies. They've been able to come together and they've already crafted the Big Tech Employability Act, sort of an MOU that puts together a united front for Africa when it comes to taking care of the anti-competition laws and regulating these companies. So we're looking at it as being a way that...
Would you like to take a glass of water? Feel free, my brother. I also have mine here. So it's a good morning.
Yes.
All right. So, from where you are living it from, so big techs have a role to play.
They have a role to play, and this big MOU, or sort of the Big Tech Accountability Act, as I was putting it across, it's inclusive of as the e-commerce, how we sell, how we buy online, and it's coming on board to ensure that there's a check on the government side. So that's really a regulation that has been put in place, and we look forward towards its successful implementation, hopefully, in terms of regulating e-commerce, in terms of regulating social media activities from the big tech companies. So when we look at e-commerce, it's part and parcel of the MOU that has been signed by those 5 countries, and it's also a great way towards on policy and legislation perspective. Yes.
Now, let me look at the UN, where you're at. What is the UN doing? And I don't know if you are in that particular capacity to speak in regards to that particular area, but of course you're privy to that particular information because you are the a senior data scientist at UNEP. What's UN doing to ensure that we have an advanced digital safety for people in Kenya and Africa?
Great, thank you. At regional level, that's the African context. They've played the United Nations has played a key role in the support of the MOU. That's the Big Tech Accountability Act that the 5 countries have already fronted and already implementing. It has played a key role in also ensuring through our annual celebrations, that's the International Day on Countering Hate Speech, that are we able to put together policies and not just having the various sessions, the awareness programs that we are partnering with the ICT Authority, the Office of the Data Commissioner, that we're also moving beyond that to support the government initiatives in Kenya, and also UN has set aside a day every year, 18th of June, to celebrate the International Day on Countering Hate Speech, creating the awareness, and also ensuring that we're putting together these big tech companies accountable. So there are different initiatives, but for me, I've been involved mainly with this initiatives, the awareness programs, the literacy programs in partnership with the Office of the Data Commissioner. And there are also, but for UN, it's more on policy regulation, development, and also supporting the different countries to be able to put these big tech companies into accountability. Yes,
and it must be challenging looking into the stakeholders that you're dealing with, the policies that you have, making sure that your foot is on the ground and moving. Challenges faced in ensuring big tech companies are held accountable? Have you encountered a few?
Yes, it's a tough nut to crack. As I mentioned that within the conversation, we talked of we've had challenges even at a government perspective on increasing the internet penetration into the rural areas, and for us it's also been a challenge when it comes now to creating awareness, because you probably maybe, let's say, go to a very remote area, you want to have a session around cyber security, and they probably even have never been introduced to how to use social media platforms. So that has been a challenge on trying to reach out areas that are yet to adopt technologies within the Kenyan context for the areas that have been involved. Again, We've also had challenges with enforcing the legislation. There's one thing on having
very common
policies on paper and implementing them. So that has been a challenge. Even now, we can have some very good policies. We can have even now the promising Big Tech Accountability Act that's being fronted by African countries, the UN and other actors on board. But when it comes to implementation, that's really a challenge, because another challenge that has come is the personnel that we've put on board to manage and ensure these various programs have been implemented, and then also the inadequate resources from finance, capital, human resources. I would go on and on, but it's quite a number of challenges. I believe if you're able to crack this nut as we move along, it will open a great opportunity for the Africans to...
All right. Thank you so much, Kennedy. A final question. What's your call to action? We're talking about big tech accountability in Africa. To those who are watching us today, as we wrap it up, final word and your call to action to everybody watching today.
Let's each and every one of us play their role. The government, the other regulators, let them continue the good work they're doing to ensure there's policy, there's other regulations that have been put in place to ensure that the big tech companies are able to live up to the rules of the land. They're able to comply with the antitrust laws that are there. They're able to live up with the laws that they found within our context. To the big tech companies, be accountable, live up to your policies, live up to the promise that you make. If it's Facebook, live up to the promise that you make. You don't have to wait for Kenya to issue a 7-day ultimatum to suspend your activities. You don't have to wait for another country to suspend your operations in another country. Live up to your policies. You have some of the best policies in terms of these social media platforms and the big tech. They have some of the best policies. Live up to them, enforce them. And also to the key stakeholder in this, being the end user of the different programs, social media platforms, make best use of these platforms. Be more accountable in terms of the information that you share out there, and leverage these digital platforms for your own job creation, employment, and also to advance your coursework, but at the same time ensure that you're doing it securely. And you able to embrace on best practices, and so that we can all foster an inclusive digital economy.
All right, thank you so much. That is Kennedy Wangari, data analyst at UNEP. Thank you so much for coming and finding time to join us. Very interesting conversation there today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And of course, it's important to have conversations like this, big tech accountability in Africa. I hope you've learned something, and it is on that note that we bring an end to this morning program right here on KBC Channel 1. Good Morning Kenya continues again tomorrow. Catch us again live tomorrow morning. My name is Aguko. On behalf of everybody that ensured this show was a success, may God bless you. May God bless the work of your hands. Have a fantastic day. Keep it KBC Channel 1.